Hey guys, back with another video. In this video I want to talk about something I've been thinking about for a long time now, but in kind of mentally preparing for making these videos, this is one of the topics that I thought would be worthwhile to discuss. And just for the record, these videos are totally unscripted. I think that it's better to just kind of make them this style improv. I feel that it, comes across as more natural for you guys as the viewer, and also it's just a more effective way of conveying the messages that I want to convey. So anyhow, in this video, I want to talk about conforming to societal norms, and I believe that conforming to societal norms can literally get you killed, both literally and figuratively, if you will. Most of the time it will be the latter, meaning that if you conform to societal norms, you can die a metaphorical death, if you will. So one of the main examples, honestly, that comes to mind, and I realize that this is a bit controversial as usual, is the whole concept of marriage. Now, I think marriage is a great concept. It's a beautiful thing to have, a husband or wife and a family. But I think that in today's society, especially in the more urban areas, marriage is not a practical application for a lot of young people. And if you go back to our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, it was more convenient and practical to get married at a younger age. Now, again, in modern times, it's less convenient to get married, especially for men, at a younger age. And the time at which it's appropriate for people to get married varies, from person to person. But everybody, should get married when they feel it's right for them. If they get married, when all of their other friends are getting married because that's the cool thing to do, well, this is kind of an example of following societal norms or the norms of your social circle. And this can lead to very dire consequences. Another example of this is, following a career path that is common within your immediate society. So, for example, where I grew up, there was a heavy emphasis on education. There was a heavy emphasis on making money. And really, that was made the number one goal. Like, there was kind of this underlying expectation that you need to become a lawyer, a doctor, and an investment banker. Well, unfortunately, not everybody is meant to be a lawyer, a doctor, and investment banker, regardless of whatever, schooling you go through. Some people are just meant to be artists or, musicians or carpenter, whatever. But in a lot of societies, and in the society that I grew up, in Westchester, New York, it was not really accepted to be an artist or to be, one of these more less accepted positions in society. And I know that this led to dire consequences for many people. I even had a friend recently who very sadly took his own life. And I believe part of the reason for his decision to do that was the fact that he never was able to live up to society's expectations. And when I say society, I mean the expectations of the society that he and I both grew up in the town in which we grew up in Westchester, New York. Of course, there are many factors that led to this horrible thing, this horrible decision that he made, and he did have some mental issues that he was diagnosed with. But I'm, for one, convinced that his inability to live up to what he felt was expected of him, ultimately led to his death. Now, it's very difficult in one of these type of situations to say exactly what caused it, but I believe that, not living up to society's expectations has led to a lot of sadness and depression for a lot of people. And the funny thing about it is that society has its head up its ass. I'm sorry. Society doesn't know what it's doing. There's so many instances in which if you follow society, you will go down the complete wrong path. And that's because there is no one-size-fits-all path for human beings. Everybody needs to carve out their own path. And if you try to follow in somebody else's footsteps, or if you try to follow in society's footsteps, it's going to lead you to not the place that you want to be in many circumstances. Another example of this is, again, with jobs. I, for one, knew from a very young age that I was never going to be able to or want to work a normal traditional job, like a normal 9 to 5, if you will, sitting behind a desk or sitting in a cubicle. I just knew that was never for me. And I don't think that that's for a lot of people. Human beings are not meant to be sitting in cubicles 40 hours a week, and sometimes, in some cases, 80 hours a week. So don't be afraid to go against society's expectations, because society does not have it all figured out. Hate to bring up this topic again, but there was a little situation where recently, society was advocating for everybody to inject themselves with experimental medicine, where we had no idea what the long-term side effects were or the short-term side effects. And we really didn't even know what was in these shots. And now, I think a lot of people are still in denial, but there's a lot of stuff coming out that is indicating that maybe these shots weren't so good for us after all. There's a lot of the sudden adult death syndrome. And I just saw something yesterday that a bunch of the funeral directors were saying that they were seeing blood clots in a large percent of the bodies that were coming into the morgue. And they said prior to 2021, they never saw these blood clots, or they said they saw blood clots in 5 to 10% of the cases. And now, I forget what the exact percentage was, but maybe like 50% of the bodies coming in have these blood clots. Also, we're seeing heart attacks and strokes in young athletes. Like, come on, guys. Something is going on here. I think, people still don't want to admit it to themselves, because the whole idea of the fact that our government or other governments around the world may have been working to people's detriment is just something that people cannot accept. And the reason why I believe they can't accept this idea that the governments could possibly be working to their detriment is because if that were true, that notion would be so scary that it would completely shatter people's reality and people's sense of reality. Because people want to feel safe, secure, like they're taken care of. And again, I think I've made this comparison in one of my earlier videos, but I think for a lot of people see the government in a similar way that they saw their parents when they were little kids, as a caretaker, somebody who, makes sure that you're safe. Well, unfortunately, the government is not always there for your protection. And so again, this ties back into my original theme for this video of following society's expectations, going with the crowd. One of my favorite quotes, that applies to this notion that I'm describing is by Mark Twain. He said, anytime you're on the side of a majority, it's time to pause and reflect. This notion, I've often heard investors talk about this notion when it comes to the stock market. For example, they say, if 90% of people think the stock market is going up, it's probably going down, and vice versa. So I think this same notion applies to, again, to following societal norms. If you, don't think for yourself and engage in critical thinking when it comes to your relationships, your job, your fitness, what type of medicine you're taking or injecting into your body, you could easily come up with the wrong answer because, society is still figuring it all out. We are very far away from becoming masters of our reality. And, I often say I think the Native Americans had things figured out much better than we do, even though they didn't have like the technology that we have. I think that they were actually a lot more advanced in many ways, definitely spiritually and emotionally. And that's a big theme of these videos that I'm trying to convey is that it's very important to advance yourself spiritually and emotionally. And part of advancing yourself spiritually and emotionally is, being your own person, being your own, thinker. There's another quote that I really like that says, the truth is we are all our own heroes, healers, and leaders. And I think that that's what everybody should be striving for, is to be their own hero, healer, and leader. And you can't be your own hero, healer, or leader by listening to society's advice. I'm sorry. You need to, carve your own path. You need to follow your own heart, and you need to do what feels right to you. I'm not saying that society has everything wrong, but when you have a society that's, advocating for everyone to inject themselves with an experimental medication that very well may have been harmful, when you have a society that is still, wrongfully convicting people of crimes and putting them in jail for a lifetime, when you have a society that in certain countries around the world, like, and of course this is an extreme example, but countries like Iran or North Korea, where they're executing women and young people for protesting for their basic rights, this is a society that needs to be questioned. Of course, now I'm not saying that the society that we have here in the United States is the same as Iran or as North Korea. Of course not. But I'm saying, even though here in the United States we don't execute, women or young people for protesting, there are a lot of things that we still are not doing right. So again, don't be afraid to take your own advice. Don't be afraid to stand up to society's bullshit, and don't be afraid to carve your own path. I hope this video resonates with everybody who watches it, and I really appreciate everybody who is watching my videos. This is a new thing that I'm embarking on, and it makes one quite self-conscious, because now that your thoughts are in the public eye, and a lot of people are obviously judging you, and you can see how many people are watching your videos, etc. But I'm not making these videos for fame or fortune. I'm not trying to make money from this whatsoever. I would like to try to reach a broader audience, but ultimately, I just want to convey my thoughts to anybody who's willing to listen to me, because again, I think that I see the world a lot differently than most people, and I think that my thoughts could be helpful to a lot of people. If you guys have any requests for any topics that you want me to discuss, please comment in the section below. I hope everybody has a great day. See you guys again soon.